Janelle. How are you doing today?
I'm okay.
Well, I know last week you were sharing with me how you were looking to transition majors and just some fears about how having that conversation with your family would go. So how about you tell me a little bit about how that situation's going?
Yeah, so I initially came into school thinking I wanted to do pharmacy school, mostly because I wanted to use pharmacy in the mission field, and I kind of came to PBA with that intention, like I wanted to go to a Christian university that had pharmacy and a good program. So kind of all throughout high school, I really thought that I would enjoy it, and like I was always good at science classes and all that, and I ended up not really liking it and actually hating it. And not so much like that I don't think I'm not good at it or that I couldn't do it. It's just I don't have enough like care for it to want to apply myself into these classes. And I feel like if I'm going to be in a major that I will enjoy, that I'm actually going to want to do the work and that I'm going to care enough to like do good in the grades and be in class. And I find myself like in bio 2 not going to class if I don't have to because we're not required unless it's an exam or a quiz. So I've kind of come to a point realizing like I don't think I want to do this anymore, and so I don't know if there's anything else that I feel like I could bring to the mission field, like another skill. So I think I should just go into cross-cultural studies. And I know for my mom, like that's really hard to grasp. Like I've kind of had the thought of telling her about like missionary work and everything, but she's always worrying about like, but how are you going to support yourself, and like is that going to pay and stability and all of that. And she like cares so much about like the status of becoming a doctor. Like my dad is more supportive, and he's always told me like do what you love, but also kind of telling me like make sure you're doing something that's going to sustain you, and like is that going to be enough for you to be able to do those things. Like pretty much that like missionary stuff should be second, and in my mind like the pharmacy part was second. Like that's just a tool that I wanted to use, and something that I wanted to bring to the table, but I'm realizing like that's not something I want to do. So I'm really considering changing my major, but I don't know how my parents are going to feel about that. And I don't know how that conversation is going to go. I'm kind of worried.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the fact that your mom isn't supportive of your decision?
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing just to see like where her mindset is and kind of like what matters to her is not what matters to me. And it's a lot of pressure because it starts to make me think like, well, maybe I should be doing something that would be sustainable. But a part of me is like, I want to do something I love regardless of the fact of money or any of those things.
Have you looked at the financial possibilities within your new major?
Yeah, so it would be like mostly support based unless I obviously have that tool or skill. Like a lot of people end up becoming teachers and or teaching like English as a secondary language or doing nursing or pharmacy and things like that, but I don't know if I'm good at any of those things or if that I want to do that. So I kind of have just a base of like I want to do cross-cultural studies, but I feel like I should be adding something on if it's a minor or a double major. But I don't know what that looks like, and it's kind of scary for me.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah, because the thought of like, well, what if I don't have something that will allow me to go into that country and be able to like provide for myself and even get in, because most of the places I want to go is like unreached places, and like you can't go in saying you're a missionary. Like you have to either be like in business or in education or have something to actually offer the country, and then through that do missionary work. But I don't know what that looks like, and I kind of feel pressured right now that I should be making a decision on like one of those things.
Why do you feel pressured?
Just because like, I mean, I need to make up my mind eventually. Like I don't want a year or two to go by and then having to take all these classes and more time pass by and not being able to graduate on time.
Yeah. But a year or two seems like a pretty far off deadline if considering. So do you feel like there's another reason you're pushing to sort of make up your mind in a rushed manner?
Well, yeah, just to show, like, to my parents, like, I do have a plan, and that, like, pharmacy won't work out, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a passion or a skill that I can use, and, like, I can still do missionary work and still sustain myself.
What if, regardless of the path that you pick, your parents are not supportive? How would you feel about that?
I mean, it would be really, really hard. I don't think I've thought about that in terms of, like, would I kind of defy them and still do what I want, or would it mean something if they told me, like, you shouldn't be doing that? And I obviously haven't had the conversation with them about it, so I don't know how that'll go. I mean, like, part of it is, like, they are paying for my studies, so what if they get upset and they're just like, well, we're not going to pay for your studies if it's not this? And then you're kind of on your own, and like the pressure of that, and you really can't have a lot of debt when you want to go overseas. You don't want to have anything kind of keeping you here.
Yeah, and looks like you're sort of being pulled in a few different directions. What do you think places the most pressure on you right now?
Mostly like telling my parents and what the consequences will be of telling them, like, look, I'm making this decision, and like having to deal with what that decision will bring out of that, like if they stop supporting me financially or are not really happy with me. Mostly that, and disappointing them,
Yeah, I completely understand. When I was an undergrad, I went through a similar experience, and I know how scary it can be to fear disappointing your family, people you care about.
Yeah.
So, what do you think would be a good first step towards getting to a point where you'd feel comfortable sharing your feelings with them?
Well, I think I'd probably go through my grandfather first, because he's like really been there for me, and like even though like my dad, like I mentioned, was really supportive, I feel like my grandfather from my mom's side will kind of help get to her and like kind of show her like it's okay for her to go after what she loves, and like have faith that everything will work out, and that like all her needs will kind of be met. And I've talked to him about it, and he's of course told me like you should talk to your mom and you should talk to your dad about it. But I kind of want him to kind of start the conversation and see how that goes.
Yeah, so I noticed that you sort of sparked up when you were talking about your grandfather. It looks like he's a really good support.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a missionary before, and so like I know that like if he was able to do it, of course that I can be able to do it. And it's frustrating because like my mom knows his story, and like he was able to do it and is perfectly fine. He was an ESL teacher in the Middle East, and so for me it's like I don't know why my mom wouldn't understand, and like she's never kind of been supportive of that aspect of like, well, if you're gonna do missionary work, make sure you're a doctor, or make sure you can sustain yourself. And I don't think she's really grasped the idea of me like actually leaving the States. I think she thinks if I go into the pharmacy program, then I'll forget about all of that, but I know not. So.
Now, I know that you've mentioned in the past that your family holds some pretty strong cultural values. What do you think it would mean for your mom for you to leave the country and do missionary work?
Yeah, it would be hard for her because our family's so close, and even though like for my grandfather, he did all of that before he got married and before she was born, and so I don't think she understands that because she didn't live through it. But like she's pretty much, and my dad too, they're pretty much like, family is everything, and like they didn't even want me to leave the state to go to school, and so like I ended up just going a couple of hours south, and like that was even hard enough for them. And so I think part of it is that, like I think part of it is the fear of how she will feel that I'm actually going to make the decision to change my major, and that would mean like that's what I want to do full time.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that you compromised when you decided to stay local, or fairly local for undergrad, and do you feel like you would be able to compromise when it comes to your future career?
I mean, compromise would be like staying in the States, but I don't think regardless of wherever I go, it would be compromise. I think it would be a lot for her. I think it still would be tough. And I don't see how I could compromise it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a very conflicting situation.
Yeah, I really want to do what I know I love and have a passion for. But I think like the influence of her putting in my mind like the stability and all of that things does make me think like I should be thinking about adding another major or a minor and using that overseas.
Now, do you feel like that would just come from the pressures you're feeling from your mom, or do you genuinely believe it would be beneficial for your work overseas?
Like I have heard that it's beneficial from like people in classes and stuff, because I've taken a couple cross-cultural classes this semester, and that's kind of I think where like it's sparking in me a desire to like do it more. But I've heard like the way that things are going, like it's not just easy to go call yourself a missionary. Like it's important to have something as like a skill to bring to the table.
Right, so what I'm hearing is that you are pretty much made up with wanting to pursue this sort of path towards becoming a missionary, but we're sort of still figuring out what that sort of special component is going to be. So I want to just task you this week with making a list of things that you are passionate about. Not necessarily things that you think your parents would approve of or would want for you, but just things if you had no pressures outside of just your pure passion and your skills, what you think that you'd be good at and what would be an asset to the field. That way you can start sort of organizing what that's going to look like, and we can narrow down. I think that'd be a good test. How do you feel about that?
I think that'd be really helpful. It would probably help me figure out like what are the things that I like and that I could bring to the table, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm excited to look over that with you next week, and we'll see. We'll figure it out.
All right, thank you.
How long?